Middlesbrough were a delight to watch going forward last season, but that's not the only thing that'll get them from finishing a ninth as they did last season and become a top six side, even capable of challenging the automatic spots. They've got to make a few pragmatic tweaks, I think, in order to become the real deal. So how does Michael Carrick turn Boro from exciting outsiders into serious contenders specifically? That's what we're going to discuss and much more on this Summer Deep Dive. Yes, welcome along to the latest EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive, one of 72 we're doing across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. Already the full set for League 2 uploaded to YouTube and to Spotify, a few for League 1 as well, so get subscribed. For now, we're focusing on the Championship and Middlesbrough, so I'm delighted to be joined by Dana Malt from the Boro Breakdown Podcast. Good evening, Dana. Talk to me about how Michael Carrick can turn Middlesbrough from exciting outsiders into serious contenders.
Evening, Gab. Yeah, you know what? I think probably what we lacked last season, aside from obviously the amount of injuries that we had and just general unavailability being a big problem, was, for me anyway, a lack of aggression off the ball. So I feel like maybe there was a degree of passiveness. We did see a lot of low quality chances be conceded. There was a whole compilation that you could create essentially of players like Andre Dazelle arrowing one into the top corner, very fine goal, but not one you really want to see your own team concede. So there were goals like that we really shouldn't have been conceding from outside the box. Really, as I said, low quality, low XG chances. And I feel like that came from, a little bit of passiveness. I don't want to kind of bang the drum of get stuck in, but there's a little bit of that, I think, where maybe some of our midfielders wouldn't really take that bite where maybe they could have done. So yeah, aside from obviously the unavailability being a problem last season, I feel like in terms of our general performance, that's something against the ball that we could probably do with improving. But Aidan Morris coming in could potentially plug that gap. So fingers crossed he can do that.
Yeah, really excited about that. Where do you feel Boro are at as a club structurally at the moment?
I think we're in a really good place. Definitely aided by the fact that Kieran Scott and Michael Carrick all seem to be singing from the same hymn sheet. I think we've seen multiple times over the past the last decade or so, that I think maybe Boro managers haven't quite aligned with, the backroom team essentially, or the team above. And to be fair, I say that it's only really recently that we've introduced this new structure of a director of football. I think it's something that Boro probably needed to catch up on, because there's a lot of clubs that have obviously gone towards that approach. Boro were maybe a little bit slow to do that. So I think bringing in Kieran Scott was definitely a signal of a new intention for Boro behind the scenes. But then obviously we had that issue with Warnock not necessarily, kind of aligning with that. And then Chris Wilder as well. So it seems like, at least for now, things are pretty rosy at Middlesbrough, and hopefully that can continue, because at the end of the day, if it's not collegial, then you probably won't get the positive results from that. So structurally, I think we're pretty sound, which gives us a good foundation to add to in terms of the playing staff.
Certainly does. In terms of the coaching staff, Michael Carrick, you happy with the work that he's done? Because it's interesting, isn't it? If you'd had a ninth place finish and then a fourth place finish, everyone would be singing his praises. But it's almost like, because it happened the other way around, where you got a massive wind early on in Michael Carrick's reign, and last season, could argue, after a few departures, a little bit of a come down from that. But broadly, would you say he's doing a good job?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, last season it was interesting for Carrick, because obviously he went through a little bit of a tough period at the beginning of the season where we couldn't buy a win for love nor money. And I think certain question marks were maybe forming around him at that point. And then there was a period around where it was just before we beat Leicester, actually. And I remember going to that game, and there was a whole narrative kind of undercurrent of ticket price increase, and we couldn't really get our form back on track until that day. And so being in that away end on that afternoon, it felt really good, because it was essentially just stopping the rot a little bit. And there was a lot of question marks forming around him before that, because it just seemed like he wasn't getting the right balance, the right blend. And I think it was difficult for him. Obviously, as you said there, finished fourth in his first season. Nobody would have expected that. I don't even think he would have expected that, to be honest. So when you reach that kind of peak, as it was then, and then you kind of come down from that, as you alluded to, it's like, especially him being a former player as well, you maybe get those questions of, oh, is he the kind of the Frank Lampard type, where it's that kind of, his name is elevating him, and actually he's not that good of a manager. But I firmly think that he is a good manager. He showed it in that season, and actually last season, where we finished, was only I think 4 points outside of the playoff places, as it was our playoff kind of charge. The door closed on us a few weeks before the season, probably a month before the season finished. But the fact that he got us into that position, managing through the difficulties that he had to endure with, as I alluded to at the top of the show, and we'll no doubt get into again, availability issues, I think he's testament to how good of a manager he is, and that makes me ever so excited for next season, really.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll have learned a lot of lessons from that tough start to the season, when the maybe balance was a little bit off kilter, and hopefully he can apply some of those. You mentioned there the words availability issues a few times so far, Dana. So talk to us about the big players that you were missing at times last season.
Well, I think it's probably best to start with the players, or the player that we definitely know was available for the whole of the season, and that was Dan Barlaser. So out of the whole squad, he's the only one that we definitively know did not get injured throughout the campaign. So I don't think Michael Carrick ever really had his best strength 11 out there, and there was a lot of inconsistencies with team selection. So it's kind of like, if you don't have the consistency within the squad or the team that you're picking, how can you really expect consistency within results when players are constantly moving around in terms of, he's starting and now he's on the bench and now he's out injured or suspended? And there were points during the beginning of the season where Latte Lath got injured, and Josh Coburn was also injured, and Boro went in hard for Tom Cannon during the summer window, and obviously didn't land him. He went to Leicester, and it kind of left us in a bit of a sticky predicament, because what happened with the injuries. We had to place Morgan Rogers up front at a point. Sammy Silvera played up front at a point. Sam Greenwood played up front at a point. So it's like, everybody could have played up front at a point. And I think that kind of sums it up, to be honest. Within that, I will say that maybe our squad depth and the quality of it wasn't necessarily good enough for championship level. I mentioned Sam Greenwood there. Decent goals and assist return, goal contribution return. But I feel like those goals maybe masked his inefficiency, his anonymity within games. Sammy Silvera just joined Portsmouth on loan, so I think it kind of tells you what you need to know about him settling into English football. And he was kind of moved around a little bit, played left wing, right wing.
Sorry, he showed flashes though, Sammy Silvera, last season, I thought, Dana.
Yeah, he did, but mostly for me, it was in pre-season against Bradford. In particular, we were playing. We were playing like League One opposition. So I'm kind of surprised in a way that he's gone to a Championship club, because I feel like maybe upper League One is his current level. Interested to see what he does there, because as you said there, there's definitely a player in Sammy Silvera. I just think that jump from the A-League in Australia to the Championship was probably too big to be able to see even half of what Sammy Silvera could offer. Very frustrating player, but if he can be refined, then I think he will be a positive player for both Portsmouth this season, then Boro next season. But yeah, the quality within the squad depth, I just don't think was good enough to kind of make do after the lack of a bit of availability. It was injuries. It was the Asia Cup, because Rani McGree went to that for Australia, and then it was suspensions as well. So we got the whole like triple whammy of unavailability throughout the season.
Yeah, well, that certainly doesn't help, and it does actually maybe paint last season a slightly kinder light, maybe when you put all of that into context. In terms of the squad then, Dana, I want to start with the goalkeeping position. You've got Sonny Dieng there, who I think has been an excellent championship goalkeeper over the last 4 years. But you've got Tom Glover, who was signed last year as well. Would you expect Sonny Dieng to be very much the number one?
Yeah, definitely. I think he absolutely deserves it. Tom Glover got minutes last season because of, again, injuries. Asia Cup, sorry, it was AFCON actually that Seny Dieng went to. He didn't play a minute because he had to actually return because of injuries. Funnily enough, it's a whole Russian doll of unavailability here. Gab, it's ridiculous, but yeah, Seny Dieng's a really good goalkeeper and crucially fits our style as well. Very good on the ball, very kind of calm and relaxed, composed in possession if he does want to kind of be that ball playing goalkeeper, and a good shot stopper as well. A really good shot stopper and a good commander of his box, I think. So yeah, Seny Dieng, really good goalkeeper to go into the season with.
Well, that's certainly a good starting point. What really interests me about the right back spot, Dana, I've had a look through the options. You've got Luke Ayling, you've got Tommy Smith, and you've got Anthony Dijksteel, although I think he's a little bit, less in favour than maybe he was a couple of years ago. But what's really interesting, I know Luke Ayling did rack up a ton of assists last season, but I would still think of him as someone that's not necessarily going to fly forward. I know he did that at times last season, but in the main, I wouldn't want to rely on that too much. But I think you're almost, with someone like Isaiah Jones in front of you, you almost want a solid and steady right back that's going to do a good job for you, rather than necessarily a super attacking right back that you don't know if you can rely on.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with Isaiah Jones is, as attacking as he is, defensively he's also very good. I think he tracks back, and for a championship winger, maybe you would expect him to not do that. But I think Isaiah Jones's defensive output is actually really good. So there's probably just a bit of a balance there. It's interesting with Luke Ayling because obviously we all know what Luke Ayling can offer at championship level. He's very solid. I didn't actually expect him for his deliveries into the box to be as good as they were towards the end of the season. There's a very good link up between him and Latte Lath, which is something to keep an eye on and probably to be optimistic about going into next season. But I'm slightly unnerved because I always feel like once we have a player on loan and then that loan deal is made permanent, that they're not quite as good the second time round.
Interesting. It's like the audition, you smash the audition, and then, once you've got the long-term contract, it's like, well.
Yes. Yeah, the expectations kind of been set there, and can he live up to that? I think my issue with Luke Ayling, or my potential worry, would be one-on-one, like defensively, him playing defending one-on-one against a tricky quick winger, because I think from Leeds fans they said that was a bit of a weakness of his. So that's maybe something to keep an eye on. But he is on the whole pretty good, I'd say, Luke Ayling. So I'm not surprised that we signed him on a permanent deal.
Talk to me. You mentioned, Dana, his link-up play with Latte Lath. I'm curious about that, because Latte Lath's a centre forward. So is it a case of Latte Lath going into the right channel and creating some space for Ayling to put the deliveries in, or can you just talk to me about how that works?
Yeah, it basically just Luke Ayling putting the ball into the box for Latte Lath. I think it was, I don't know whether Luke Ayling just had some sort of contact lenses in that basically just zoned in and focused on Latte Lath. But yeah, when he got down the right-hand side, Luke Ayling, some really wicked deliveries, fantastic. If you watch the goal that Latte Lath scored against Ipswich away, fantastic ball into the box from Luke Ayling, and Latte Lath got on the end of it. It's funny actually, because the Middlesbrough admin on Twitter seemed to realise that whenever Latte Lath scored towards the back end of the season, Luke Ayling would be like his number one fan. He would be like the first player there to him. So there was a bit of a bromance going on there, and I think you could see it on the pitch. Just that Latte Lath's very good within the box, I would say. I think he's got good appreciation of space and good movement to get into those areas. So I think having those deliveries from out wide is actually something that I think we miss with Lucas Engel on the left-hand side. I don't think his deliveries are particularly noteworthy, to be honest. So it's good to have that kind of quality of delivery on the right.
Isn't that funny, Dana? You would kind of assume that your Luke Ayling you wouldn't get great delivery from, and that your exotic fullback on the other side would be the one that you got the great delivery from. I find that really surprising.
Yeah, so do I, to be fair. I mean, the thing with Lucas Engel, he's not bad at all. I just think that, especially post Ryan Giles, it's always going to be difficult for a player to really stand out, because Ryan Giles did that and then some. His, that cliche one of the left foot absolutely meets Ryan Giles. So, yeah, I think it was always going to be difficult following in his footsteps. I think he's okay in a lot of areas, but if you want somebody that's like a Ryan Giles that excels further up the pitch, then maybe Lucas Engel isn't the one. Although what I will say is that when we signed him, we spoke to somebody that watches Danish football quite frequently, and he did speak quite highly of his attacking output. So I don't know whether that it was maybe just the way that Lucas Engel's being worked into that Middlesbrough team, how the setup was, because it was a little bit. He seemed a little bit restrained, a little bit held back. At the beginning of the season, we didn't have so much of an outlet on the left. We never really saw him get forward as much, so might have been on instruction.
Okay, interesting. I'm just thinking because you tend to have Riley McGree on the left wing, right? So,
Yes.
so he's the one that you would say drives inside. You wouldn't
Yep.
say Riley McGree's going to hold the width so much, or be an outlet. So maybe that's a factor there.
Yeah, you know what? I was thinking it's quite simple when you speak about it, because, as you said, Ronnie McGree comes inside, and then you've got that whole left flank for somebody to hold that width and be that outlet. So it's a particular note of frustration for me and for us on the pod. Seeing Boro, everyone kept coming inside, and we didn't really have that width. That's probably what contributed to Boro's slow start to the season. Michael Carrick was essentially trying to react to not having the Ryan Giles, the Tube Rat Bums, the Aaron Ramseys, the Cameron Archers in the side. So he was trying something different, and it didn't quite work. One thing that I'd love to see next season is essentially Lucas Engel just unleash, because there's definitely a more attacking left back in there. We just haven't really seen it.
Interesting. Is there a competition element to this, Dana? Because I had a look through the squad, and unless there's someone who's amazing coming through the youth system, I think it's just the one left back that you've got. So are you going to need to add competition?
We've got Alex Bangura there. So there's Lucas Engel and Alex Bangura, yeah. I like the look of Bangura. I think he's very quick. He's very direct. And I just quite like the way that he plays because of that. I'd like to see more from him. Shock horror, he was another one that got savaged by injuries last season. Pulled his hamstring at Blackburn away. I was at that game, and he looked really bright, and then obviously he had to go off. So there's them two. I don't know if you've seen the reports that we are looking still at Ryan Giles. I know that he's signed permanently with Hull, but Boro keeping eyes on that just to see if anything develops, whether they can go in for him, because I think what's been said is that Ryan Giles acknowledges that he made the wrong decision joining Luton instead of Boro, and Tim Walters, the Hull manager now, I reckon he'll fancy Ryan Giles, to be fair, so I don't think that it'll materialise where Ryan Giles will sign for Boro or Boro will go in for him, but they are keeping an eye on that.
Well, what you don't want to do, I think, Dana, is waste too much time, especially if you feel like you do want to add another left-back option. And forgive me, how old is Bangura? Is he a young lad that could go out on loan? Or
24?
24, so he's past the sort of loan.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So you're not really loaning out Engels or Bangura. So that's an odd situation as well, because neither of them, you would say, like, you're definitely really happy with them, and it's like they're going to be a star player sort of thing. But neither of them are.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I think Boro. I think what's been reported is that Boro are happy with Engel and Bangura, but if the opportunity arose to bring Giles back, then they would explore it. But yeah, left back's an interesting one, because I'm not entirely convinced by Engel. As I said, it could be just because of on instruction. We haven't really seen him be unleashed in the attacking third. And Bangura, although I like the look of him, we've not seen too much of him, to be fair. So I think there's a lot of question marks still over left back, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really interesting situation. You'd almost rather you'd almost rather have a spot that's free, so you can sort of sign that player that you're really confident is going to improve you. But listen, hopefully Lucas Engel can have a bigger season next year, so that might be what you're sort of relying on. But central midfield, to my eyes, Dana, it could be your strongest area or one of your strongest areas because I'm actually Johnny Howson was your most regular starter last season, and I'm actually not convinced that he's going to get into the first midfield too because you've got Hayden Hackney, who I think is a really exciting young player. You've got Aidan Morrissey, you've just signed. Dan Barlaser, I really like as a deep line playmaker. I think I really liked him at Rotherham, so I think there's there's some development in him. So for me, that's looking like a really strong position.
It is definitely. I mean, I've thought for the past like maybe 6 or 7 seasons now that Johnny House is going to be phased out, and then he never ever is. So I wouldn't be surprised if at least at the beginning of the season he does start alongside Hackney, mostly because we know that that duo works. We've seen it last season and the season before. We know that it works with Morris. I think on paper he's definitely a Michael Carrick midfielder, somebody that I think is positive, forward thinking, can receive with his back to goal, and can kind of be that first pass out from the back. And I think he's I wouldn't say he's press resistant, but I think he's probably better at evading the press than Barlaser is. And I do think that that's probably where Barlaser struggled last season. He has actually been linked with a move to Turkey, Barlaser, so it's going to be interesting to see how like if that develops.
That's
Personally,
interesting. That's interesting, Dana, because I hadn't. So there's a belief that Barlaser is good when he's in front of when he's facing the right way and he's very technical and he's got a good passing range. But if he's got his back to goal and he's receiving off the defence, then sometimes he can struggle to turn if he comes under pressure.
Yeah, I think he's just a little bit too slow in that respect. In the championship, when you're pressed and you're pressured so, like, players are on it instantly. I think they maybe sussed out that Barlaser was a little bit of a weak spot within that. Barlaser is a very good player in distributing the ball, spotting those runs that are made and being very creative from deep. But I think he's also a very thoughtful player. And when you have that type of approach where you might receive the ball off Senny Dieng, you might receive the ball off the defence with his back to goal or on the half turn. I just don't think he's as quick with that, and I feel like maybe you have to be. So it's either that Boro slightly tweak their approach when Barlas is in the side, or maybe given the interest from Turkey, maybe his Boro days are a little bit numbered.
Maybe you cash in, yeah. Okay. Hayden Hackney then, Dana, how important do you think he can be? Do you think he can be one of the best midfielders in the Championship this season?
I think he's capable of that, yes. I mean, I do think he was a miss last season. He's such a positive forward-thinking midfielder. He's got that drive on the ball. I think maybe in terms of his creative passing, not bad by any means. Just think maybe that's something that he can improve. Off the ball, I think he can maybe improve as well. There was a few instances, probably the season before last, where I think as he was getting forward, there were runs being made behind him that it's kind of that balance that you have to strike, isn't it, between going forward and then maybe leaving that space in behind. That could easily be covered by, I say easily, that could be on paper covered by Johnny House or whoever partners him in midfield, but maybe a little bit of a problem there. But yeah, one of many players, and I already feel like a broken record, that just didn't have anywhere near an available season last season. So hopefully he could put his injury issues of last campaign behind him, because he's no doubt a very, very talented young player and somebody that has played with freedom in this Middlesbrough side in recent seasons. So I'm really hoping that he can have a good campaign, maybe add some goals to his game, crash that box a little bit, something that I want to see from him. But yeah, he's going to be a big plus if he's fit next season.
Let's hope so. I'm just listening to you there, Dana, talking about the respective challenges that each of those midfielders might have, especially the ones that were there last season. It makes me wonder actually how Boro find a midfield that's got the right equilibrium, if you like, because there's a few things that you're going to need. First of all, that press resistance that you spoke about there, in terms of being able to collect the ball off the defence. You've got to have some technical ability. you've got to be disciplined enough, and you've got to be aggressive when needed. And it feels like you've got a group of midfielders there who each of them have one or two of those attributes. But how do you find those four attributes between them with two midfielders? And
Yeah.
I'm actually a little bit uncertain at how that works now. You come to talk about it.
Yeah, it's something that I've kind of thought about as well. That's why I think, at least at the beginning, it has to be House and Hackney for me. And then you hope that Ed Morris gets up to speed with English football because, this is a 22-year-old player coming from the MLS, and that's the only league that he's played in. So I think it's going to be we're going to have to maybe heed caution with that. He might not even settle, but I think we've got to be patient with him as well. That's why I think Carrick will. I feel like Carrick will be patient with him, and
Right.
maybe he gets a few chances in the cup. But I can already see the clamour and hear and feel the clamour for Ed Morris to be in that Middlesbrough midfield. But I think the best approach from Carrick is actually probably to just be a little bit patient with him. But no doubt he kind of plugs, at least on paper, that gap of adding that little bit of bite into midfield, being a presser, a chaser. Very, very good defensively. Like his defensive numbers are insane in terms of tackling, reading the game, interceptions. I think that he's probably someone that eventually, maybe midterm, you want in your midfield, probably alongside Hayden Hackney, to be honest. But Johnny Howson's evergreen; he'll always be there.
Interesting. Well, that's quite a nice option to have up your sleeve to bring into the fold if you need an alternative to the House and Hackney. Sounds like quite a nice duo, that House and Hackney. Has a good ring to it, doesn't it?
It does.
So, centre backs then, Dana. You've got four pretty experienced centre halves, or proven, should I say, centre halves, because you've got Raj van den Berg there. You've got Matt Clark, who's a left-footed centre back. Seems to have gone off the boil the last couple of years, but I know he can do it at championship level. You got Dale Fry there, who's been there for I think this is his 9th season, 10th season, something like that. And then there's one more, Daryl Henhan, who was in again, another one who was injured last season. So four decent options there. I imagine you feel like you're in a pretty good position in terms of centre halves.
Yeah, that's probably another one along with central midfield where we are stacked with quality. Probably think that is our strongest area of the park. I feel sorry for Carrick in a way that he has to make a decision next season on who that pairing is going to be, because after 7 months out, Darragh Lenihan returned to training, which is a massive plus. I really like him as a defender. Matt Clark ended the season so well. Like, he was in my thinking of player of the season just because of how good unbelievable for me anyway, in regards to the fact that he was out injured for a while with a back problem.
Right.
Came back in against, I think it was against Huddersfield first, and then he played against Leeds because Paddy McNair went off injured. Conceded a penalty, but then from there, he's been really, really, really good. Matt Clark, just such a fantastic defender, puts his head where it hurts, but also has that kind of glossy side to his game where he brings the ball out really well.
Left-footed balance as well, Dana, because I think all your others are right-footed as well, so that's a big plus for him.
Yeah, 100%. It's such a tough decision because Rav van den Berg ended up getting player and young player the season, I think it was. So he was fantastic, but don't count out Darragh Lenihan because he's fantastic as well. Dale Fry probably actually 4th choice for me, which I wouldn't have said a few seasons ago, because I actually would have said that Dale Fry is probably like top 2 of our defenders, but just based on what I saw last season, I feel like Van den Berg, Clark, and Lenihan are all ahead of him for me.
Interesting. Do you reckon Dale Fry needs to seek pastures new?
Potentially, yeah, potentially. I don't think he will. But we'll see how next season plays out, because he is still a good defender, Dale Fry, but I just feel like it's maybe he's the victim of having players ahead of him that are maybe a little bit better than him, and a little bit better suited to the way that we play as well. Having those ball playing defenders that can kind of be that first contact, first kind of distribution towards the attack. So yeah, it's a proper headache that Michael Carrick will have, but it's, I guess, a bit of a good one.
Yeah, for sure. Do you know what? When I came to look at the squad, Dana, in terms of players under contract, I was actually quite surprised that you didn't have as many attacking midfielders as I thought. Because I remember last season you were absolutely stacked with them, but I guess you've loaned out Sammy Silvera, Greenwood's gone, one or two others as well. So it's actually maybe not a squad where you've got that sort of embarrassment of riches as you maybe did have. Morgan Rogers gone as well, of course. But I really like Finn Azaz. Thought he was excellent for Plymouth Argyle in the first half of last season. And I think he can be one of the best attacking midfielders in the Championship.
Yeah, I'm really excited for him as well. He's had that like journey to the start, if you will, with those 6 months that he had from January to the end of the season. So I think he's going to have a really big campaign next season. And like somebody that in and around the box, I think is so effective. And we saw flashes of it. We saw him gradually kind of get up to not full pelt with his kind of performance output, but we definitely saw flashes from him. I think next season he's going to be one of Boro's best. Such a good pickup, especially considering that we lost Morgan Rogers. Not that not that soon. Well, I think Morgan Rogers left towards the end of the window, and Finn Azaz signed at the beginning. But I think if you're going to lose Morgan Rogers, you've got to bring in somebody that is good within himself, and Finn Azaz is absolutely that. I think he can be one of the best players in the league, I think, and I think he's going to be one of Boro's best players next season for sure. I'm really, really excited to see how his season pans out.
Yeah, I think he can really bring that wow factor in attacking midfield. I'm wondering, with the left wing at the moment, you've just got Riley McGree, and as an option. But I'm wondering actually if has Marcus Force been played on the left ever at all, or do you think that's a possibility?
No, he's been played out on the right. I feel like
Right, yeah.
I feel like Marcus Force is kind of the right winger now. I've been asking for him, or hoping that Michael Carrick considers him as a centre forward, especially amid last season's kind of availability problem up front. But he never really was. We've just signed Delano Bergzorg, who was at Huddersfield last season. I think obviously his versatility will probably lend itself to him playing left wing if Ronnie McGree is not available, or if he's sold, because he's got 1 year left on his contract. He hasn't signed a new one yet, so yeah, it's not out of the question that Ronnie McGree might leave Boro
Do you think
in this
you'll
month.
get time up to a new deal?
I think so eventually. The good thing is that he's not been linked anywhere. So I think that kind of I take from that his agent isn't putting his name kind of out there, putting the feelers out there. So I think an agreement will be reached soon, I hope. But I think you kind of want it to be announced sooner rather than later, just for that kind of uncertainty, especially from the fans, anyways. Because Rani McGree is a good player, and I actually think that he is Boro's best, or certainly was kind of before the likes of Finn Azaz came in. So yeah, I think that he could have a really big season for us. I hope that we tie him down, because we've done so with Isaiah Jones, with Johnny Howson, with Michael Carrick, the manager. We've signed, we've kept hold of assets, and Riley McGree is a big asset for Boro. So hopefully we can tie him down to a new contract as well.
Yeah, fingers crossed with that, because I really like his energy as well, and the way he runs at opponents. Very direct, isn't he? And I think he probably offers something different to some of the more technical players in the side. So you always want to have that balance. It's interesting, the right wing, because a couple of years ago we were talking about Isaiah Jones as being easily your best player, and now you mentioned Marcus Force has become the right winger, if you like. So what's Isaiah Jones got to do to get back into that starting 11, do you think?
Well, I think he did that last season. The season before last, I think it was tough for him. He spoke about his kind of his problems off the pitch, which contributed to a lack of minutes on it. So it was firstly good to see him back playing football and enjoying it again last season. The thing with Isaiah Jones for me is I really want to see him get to the byline and cut the ball back. His crossing ability isn't the greatest. I think the technique that he kind of puts on his crosses isn't, I don't think it really allows for him to lift the ball off the floor, to be honest. So I think if he gets to the byline, a bit like, when we saw the combination between him, Crooks and Dijksteel under Chris Wilder and Boro were able to combine with that triangle, get kind of beyond the fullback.
What I remember about that was thinking about it now, when he was at his best, it was always low crosses, like cutbacks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like pinpoint crosses, but it was like the best part was that you could get to the byline and then have a bit of composure to pull the ball back. But it's not like the technique on the crosses were amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of why I want to see the return of that, because listen, he can work on his crossing, but I don't feel like I've seen the development of it necessarily. Hopefully I see that this season, because he doesn't really get to the byline anymore, and that's something that I want to see from him, because he was so dangerous in those positions. As you said, the low cutback.
Sorry, do you think it's a confidence thing, Dana, or?
No, I feel like it's maybe on instruction. But maybe it did seem like he was enjoying his football again last season, so maybe not.
Okay.
But yeah, it is pretty interesting with Jones, because that's where I think that he's at his best. So if Boro could get Isaiah Jones into those positions, then I think that we'll see a similar player, if not the same player, as the one that we saw under Chris Wilder, because he did seem to have that freedom to his game where he was very eager to impress and get at the fullback. Don't really see that anymore from him, unfortunately.
That's interesting though. You mentioned that, because I think I do wonder, for a lot of modern managers, it's a massive thing nowadays when you play 4-2-3-1 to have your wide men cutting inside, and having traditional wingers is almost seen as a bit old fashioned. So, wide player hugging the touchline, but actually, I think it's more situational than that, where like if you've got an elite player who's very good at cutting inside and creating, that's one thing. But sometimes it's actually just a case of maximizing the skills of the player that you've got as well. So maybe there's a degree of that in there.
Yeah, definitely. You know what? I would love, the one thing that I would love to see, well, many things I'd love to see for next season, but in regards to this conversation, I would love us to probably use the the wide areas a lot more. At the beginning of the season, everything was coming narrow, and I see that a lot with football now. Everything does come narrow. Everyone comes inside. Everybody wants to get on the ball, either in the half space or the kind of central zones, or just outside the box. I would just love to see more crosses, to be honest. I'd love to see more crosses and more cutbacks, because I know Lath is on the smaller side of a striker, but he doesn't have a leap on him. He's very good in the
he can
air.
get on the end of things, can't he?
Yeah, that goal that he scored against Leeds, that header from what felt to me like it was on the halfway line. I mean, that was an incredible, obviously it wasn't, but it was an incredible goal. And I think we've seen a few examples of Lath being good in the air. And it's not necessarily, kind of crosses that are in the air. Sometimes it can be, like we discussed, those cutbacks, those low crosses. We'd just like to see more of that. But then I suppose if you don't have a Ryan Giles, you don't necessarily, with Giles, you know that you're going to get fantastic deliveries 9 times out of 10.
Obviously, yeah.
With other players, it's not so set in stone that's going to be the case. So, yeah, maybe that's why Boro want Ryan Giles back. Maybe that's why they're thinking that they're kind of like considering a move and keeping an eye on it, because maybe they want that from him again.
Yeah, that would certainly make a difference, wouldn't it? Where was it? Strikers then. Emmanuel Latte, you touched on it there, Dana. It was like he seemed to start quite slowly, and I think he had a period of unavailability. But then second half of the last season, he was on fire, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was incredible. I think it was, I wouldn't say entirely unprecedented, but it did come a little bit out of the blue, I think. Mostly because at the beginning of the season, the first half of the season, we saw a good player in creating his own chances and causing problems for defenders. He's quite strong. He's He's able to pin centre halves, which again, for his stature, you wouldn't expect. But he's one of those that I think, really hassles and harries, and he creates his own opportunities from that. But one of the things that we didn't see was composure. I think he was very, very erratic. When he got, one-on-ones, I think he snatched a lot of the chances. Me and Johnny remarked that if you give him the time, he's probably going to blaze the ball over the bar, whereas he's kind of that instinctive finisher instead. But actually, we saw him add that composure to his game at the back end of the season. And that's massive credit to him. Massive, massive credit to him. And all I've seen from him in pre-season is him working and getting on the weights and doing his pre-season training before actually reporting to pre-season training. And he's got his braids in as well. So a new hairdo for Latilath. I think he's going to have a really good season, hopefully, because we saw at the latter stages of last season what he can offer, and he can be a dependable striker. Yes. Oh, there's so many puns that you could shot out there for Latilath, to be fair. That's a good one, Gab.
Thank you. The Delano Bergsorg, though, is another striker that you've signed, Dana, and I almost he seems to have a good record from across Europe, but the most important thing for me is I don't really want to judge him too much on his time at Huddersfield, because that was under that was in a very chaotic period, a squad that was pretty low on quality, playing under certain managers that were very defensive minded and didn't have much creativity at all. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he caught fire in a more creative Michael Carrick side with players like Finn Azaz sort of serving him.
Yeah, I really hope so, because having a bit of a deep dive on him and looking at his kind of attributes, I think he's a very direct player, very tricky, loves to isolate a fullback one-on-one and try to work it beyond him. So in terms of maybe somebody that can offer you that 1v1 threat against a fullback, he's definitely somebody that can do that. The problem that I've seen with Bergsorg is that his decision-making is a little bit kind of off target, I think. Sometimes instead of passing, he'll elect to take an extra few touches, maybe try to beat his man, when really the more fruitful avenue is to just lay that ball off inside. I've seen many clips of Huddersfield players last season gesticulating with frustration at basically him not passing to them, and one of the criticisms that I heard a lot from Huddersfield fans was that he was quite a greedy player. So if he can maybe refine his decision making, I think there's a good player in there.
I would also maybe argue back a bit about that, because I think you could just as easily say he often didn't have anyone to pass to in the first place, because he was so isolated that it was actually difficult to sort of connect with maybe the midfield. So I would. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think clean slate and let's see what he can do. But no, I think the decision making point is an interesting one. But then you've also got Josh Coburn there as well, Dana, who had an amazing half a season, certainly on loan at Bristol Rovers, 22-23, first half of 22-23. It's has he lost a bit of momentum since then, do you think, because of Latilath's form and things like that?
I think he lost momentum because he got injured. Another one. Yeah, he got injured. I can't remember what injury it was. I can't keep up, to be honest. So his season was massively curtailed by that, and he's coming back to fitness in a really interesting situation, because obviously Latilath's there. He massively caught fire at the end of the season, as we've spoken about, and Boro are looking for another striker, which I think is the right thing. Yeah, I think that's the right thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they've profiled Bergsorg as the versatile forward, so I actually think most of his minutes will be spent on the left, in my opinion. So then you've got Coburn and Latilath. So they're looking for another striker, which maybe makes me think that Coburn might go out on loan. I personally think that's the right decision. I've maintained that opinion on Coburn for a couple of seasons now. I thought that he should have gone out on loan last summer, and by all accounts, he was set to join Plymouth, and then Boro pulled the plug on it because they didn't land Tom Cannon. So it was kind of that domino effect there with
at least
transfer.
Leicester made the most of him.
Oh God,
giving him one star.
I saw Enzo Maresca say something about him towards the back end of the season that I can't remember what he said verbatim, but it made me think, well, great, like we could have done with him. You didn't need him then. But yeah, like with Coburn, I think it's an interesting situation with him, because he might end up being that third choice striker, and I don't think that he deserves to be a third choice
Yeah,
striker. Really,
I
I think
agree.
he deserves to be getting minutes. So
Especially now, you wouldn't classify him as a youngster as such. Now I would
yeah,
guess he's about 22 now, something like that. So
I don't- yeah, 20, maybe 21. I don't know, to
oh,
be honest.
21, okay, yeah,
Something
something
like
around
that.
there. So I think he's getting to the stage where he needs to be second choice rather than third
Yeah.
choice. And but one thing you mentioned there, you've got. I mean, let's say you've got Bergzorg sometimes playing off the left, and you've got Marcus Force playing off the right. Is there the danger that your wide forwards then become too goal oriented, and you've got Latte in the middle as well, and actually you then rely too much on Finn Azaz for the creative element? Whereas I think what you want is one wide forward and one inside forward, if you like, and one creator. Doesn't matter which side, but you want that balance where you got your centre forward, maybe an inside forward that's going to try and get in and score a few goals, and then your other player that's going to try and cut inside into those and combine with Azaz. But I just worry that if you have two inside forwards and Azaz, they're all trying to get into the same areas, and actually it ends up getting a bit congested, possibly.
Yeah, there's a lot of England parallels here. It's crazy. Yeah, I think then the emphasis probably is put on the fullbacks because in the way that Boro play, well, usually it's that three defenders at the back. One of the fullbacks tucks in to create that three. Then you've got the two in midfield and the five up front. So I think, yeah, there's probably emphasis then on a Luke Ayling to get quite far forward and maybe ping those
Mm,
balls in, or Lucas Engel. That's kind of what I hoped. I hoped that we would stick with the same formula as what we saw in 22-23, but replace the kind of personnel, the options that we didn't have. So yeah, I take your point completely. I think that is potential concern. But Riley McGree will be the one that comes inside. And I actually think that at least for the beginning of the season, it'll be Isaiah Jones on that right-hand side. Because again, shock horror, Marcus Force injured. I think he's recently come back.
right.
So, yeah, it's a good point about the balance there. But I do
Mm.
think that the fullbacks will probably provide you, or at least Michael Carrick will want them to provide us with that creativity.
I know Luke Ayling could probably point to his output in the second half of last season and say, I can be relied to get forward and
Yeah.
provide the productivity. But I do have some skepticism, sustainability concerns about whether he's going to do that again, because it's not something that I would really have associated with. I think his link up play is tidy, and I think in tight areas he can link up well when he's got other players around him. But I'm not confident in Luke Ayling to say, yes, he's going to fly forward and get a ton of, goal contributions again. Yes, he was great in the second half of last season, but I don't think he should be putting too much reliance on or too much
Yeah.
emphasis on that, if you know what I mean.
No, I completely agree. I really do, which is why I actually wanted um probably a right back option that you can maybe rely on
Mm.
in that respect. Probably a bit of a younger one as well because we've got Tommy Smith there too, and Tommy Smith is a more of an attack minded fullback, but you've got two players in their 30s there. And
Mm.
in regards to squad building, Anthony Dijksteel's probably halfway out the door already, to be honest. He doesn't seem to be particularly fancied under Michael Carrick.
Mm.
It's actually in his minutes that he got towards the end of last season was playing right wing. So I think that kind of shows you what kind of where his future lies, to be honest. If he's not playing
Mm.
in right back and he's being shoehorned right wing, it's probably his time's up and the writing's on the wall. But yeah, maybe I'm not. Maybe I shouldn't be thinking about the midterm. Maybe I should just be thinking about the kind of present day here and now. But yeah, I think we're probably going to want another right back anyway within the next season
Mm.
or two, maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's whether you'd be able to offload Tommy Smith as well, and
Mm,
get someone who would take him on. And again, it's not ideal sometimes when your decision making is dictated by who you've got under contract as opposed to what you'd want to do idealistically.
yeah,
And it's a delicate balancing act, I think, for the club. But I agree with you. I think another right back option would be ideal, but you have got a lot of options there. Let's talk about youth, Dana. Any talented players coming through the academy that we should have half an eye on?
For me, Sonny Finch, he's a striker. I honestly am so sick of the word injuries, but he was another one actually that got injured last season. Honestly, Gav, it's ridiculous. But Michael Carrick rates Sonny Finch quite highly. He had a really good partnership with Josh Coburn in the under-18s. Very quick, knows where the goal is. I think he was the top. Oh no, I think he got Player of the Month actually in PL2 last season at some point. Or maybe I'm just misremembering that completely. But I do know that he's quite highly rated. But Law McCabe, central midfielder, he's somebody that we saw come through towards the back end of the campaign. And looked very comfortable, I have to say. He was the type of player that just looks very good technically, comfortable on the ball. Even when I remember he played a pass kind of out from the back, and it was one of those kind of hairy passes where it's like, oh, but he looked completely unnerved by it. Really, really confident, composed, and honestly, he didn't look one bit out of place. And I think that's the biggest compliment that I could give to him. So, yeah, he's another one within the central
Who would you
midfield.
say he's closest to out of the midfielders you've got at the moment?
Probably Hayden Hackney, I would say.
Okay.
So it'd be good if Law McCabe follows Hayden Hackney, because that's 2 academy graduates there, isn't it? So yeah, he's one. So him and Sonny Finch. There's also James Wilson, who came on central defender, big imposing central defender. He came on the last game of the season against Watford. Michael Carrick seems to rate him quite highly as well. So there's 3 names there, but I think out of all of them, I mean, I'm maybe it's bad if I kind of shuffle Sonny Finch to the side here, because to be fair, Sonny Finch for the past few seasons has been highly rated, but Law McCabe seems to be the one currently that's being spotlighted a little bit.
Very interesting. Yeah, I look forward to seeing how he can develop. It's always a tough balancing act for clubs that want to be ambitious at championship level. Like, how many opportunities do you give these young players? And sometimes loaning them out can be the best way of them getting some regular football. But also the romanticist in me likes to see there being a spot open for them sometimes, to sort of see if someone can be a bit of a wild card and maybe light things up. So we'll see how Michael Carrick strikes that balance this season. Expectations then, Dana. Would you say top 6 is an expectation or just a target?
I would. Good question, Gab. I would say expectation, to be honest. Mostly because although we finished outside the playoff places last season, I think there was just this general consensus that we were better than that. It was just we couldn't find that consistency within results, because we couldn't find the consistency within team selection. And as I mentioned, I think it was an achievement within itself that Michael Carrick got us to the position that we did, given everything they had to contend with. So, yeah, I think it probably is an expectation. Boro fans know that this is a talented group of players that we've got, and a talented manager that we've got at the helm as well. We've seen what he can do with a team once everything is kind of purring and everyone is available. So I think it is an expectation to get into that top 6. And I do feel like we'll get there as well.
Interesting.
Because we did underperform last season. I think our numbers were really good. It was just we at the beginning of the season. At the beginning of next season is going to be really interesting, because 2 seasons in a row now we've kind of spluttered to start, and we haven't got out the traps very well. So yeah, if we can tie that issue up at the beginning of the campaign, which I think we will, because we've retained a lot of players last season, last summer going into the last season. Obviously, we lost a lot of key personnel, and that was difficult for Carrick to replace. Well, I don't think it was difficult for Carrick to replace them necessarily, but it was difficult to kind of respond tactically to the lack of those players. So yeah, I think we'll get there. I just hope we have a good start this season, because it'd be good to have that instead of a bit of a crap one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I was to look at how close you are to a best 11 that I'm super confident is going to help you get you into the top 6, I would say you've got about 7 players. 7 players there that I would say I'd be happy to kind of back to the hilt, if you like. But I also feel like you might need another 2, 3 or 4 additions in terms of the best 11 if you're to make me super confident. Not to say that I couldn't see you getting into the top 6 with 1 or 2 more first 11 improvements. But if if you wanted me to be like super bullish about Middlesbrough, I would say it's more like 3 or 4.
Yeah, I probably agree with you actually with 7. It's for me the wide areas, the left back, the right back, and then probably the left and right wing. Although I say that Rani McGree, I'll probably make it 8 actually because Rani McGree out on that left is a very good player, as I've said. So yeah, I think we're a couple away, but it's mostly that my kind of confidence comes and always has done from Michael Carrick because he can knit a team together really well. He develops players really well. I think not having Aaron Danks actually is going to be an interesting one because Aaron Danks was Carrick's kind of right hand man along with Jonathan Woodgate, and he left to join Vincent Kompany's coaching staff at Bayern Munich. So
Yeah.
Graham Carrick, Michael Carrick's brother, has
Oh,
actually
right. He
come
used to
in.
play for West Ham, didn't he, Graham Carrick?
Yeah, he was on Newcastle's coaching team, quite highly rated, it seems. I think he was in the Newcastle youth coaching staff. So it's yeah, I'm intrigued to see how that dynamic shapes up because Aaron Danks was, by all accounts, a very good part of that coaching structure and a good link actually, given that he had ties with Aston Villa and the England youth teams as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to kind of see where that goes.
Yeah, certainly will. So we've said top 6 is the expectation for Middlesbrough this season. What for you, Dana, would be the biggest reason to believe that you'll meet your ambitions?
I kind of said it there. I think Michael Carrick. Michael
Yeah.
Carrick is a fantastic manager, and yes, he manoeuvred through a bit of a couple of tough, sticky spells last season. But I think that he's probably learned from that to not overcomplicate things to start with, and also what's made me confident is I mentioned it briefly there, player retention. Because I went into last season with grand expectations because I just kind of assumed that we'd not necessarily keep the players that we had, the loan players, but that we'd replace them really well. And actually, I completely underestimated the impact that they had and how kind of how it would be to replace them. So it's good that we've kept really important players to this side. It's just about adding to that now. And with Michael Carrick at the helm, I think there's every reason to be optimistic.
I think also you maybe didn't rely on loanees quite as much last season. I think I'm right in
Yeah.
saying, and I think that can sometimes put you in a better position for the following season because you've developed your own players as opposed to scrambling around and having to replace your loanees and that sort of short termism. So I think that definitely helps as well. Reasons for doubt.
Oh, injuries again. Honestly, I think obviously I'm scarred from last season because of that. It just never seemed like we ever got fully going. I think we had a period of maybe 6 wins around November, September.
The
That's not
players
right.
were scared as well.
Yeah. Oh God, they were absolutely. Jesus Christ. Yeah, we had a good spell around September, October, I think it was, or maybe October, November. I can't remember. 6 wins in a row, and then after that, it kind of just felt like we struggled to kind of get up to speed again. We never really got a period of consistency together until probably the end of the season, where it was too late. So yeah, availability. If we could keep our key players fit, then I'd be confident. But yeah, there's something on those pitches at Rockcliffe that seemed to, I don't know whether Boro players stepped stepped under a ladder or something.
Whether Kevin from Home Alone's been on the
Yes.
yeah.
Oh God.
Hopefully you can look into the sports science side of things and just have a look into that side of things. That's always worth doing, I think, to try and improve as a club. So too early for a prediction, I think, although you have said that you think you will get there. But if you were to give me a number between 1 and 10 to denote your level of optimism, what number would you go for?
Oh, probably. Can I be awkward and do a 0.5?
Go on.
I'll go 7.5, I think. I want to
7.5.
rein it in a little bit because I was probably at a 10 or 11 last season and that came back to bite me. So I'll go 7.5. I think there's a lot of good stuff with Boro, but as any fan of any football club will say, you can't put too much faith in your side because they'll let you down. But yeah, I'm hoping that we can have a good season. I think we will. I do think we will. Michael Carrick's still here. He's signing a new contract. We've got genuinely talented players and a talented starting 11. If we can add to the quality further and add a little bit more quality within depth, yeah, I'm pretty confident. And within that, I'm pretty optimistic too.
Fingers crossed then. Listen, Dana, thanks so much for your insight. I really appreciate your
Thank
time
you.
this evening. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the Middlesbrough Summer Deep Dive on EFL Debate. Get yourself subscribed on YouTube and on Spotify. Leave us a review as well if you've enjoyed, or drop a comment. And we'll see you again very soon.